The sun hasn't risen yet, but you're already awake. In this city, sleep is a luxury reserved for those who haven't learned what morning brings. You stand pressed against strangers in the square, shoulders touching but eyes averted. No one speaks. The air smells like old blood and fresh fear, a combination your nose stopped protesting months ago. Above you, wooden platforms rise against the grey sky, structures built with the same care as temples, but serving a darker god. This is the third time this week. The magistrate calls it justice. You've learned to call it survival training. Ancient China didn't stumble into cruelty the way a man stumbles into a ditch. It built cruelty with the same precision it built its walls and canals. Under the Qin dynasty, philosophers decided that fear worked better than virtue, that punishment was cleaner than persuasion. A man named Shang Yang wrote it all down in books that became law. The book said, make the penalties harsh enough and people will behave. Make them visible enough and obedience becomes reflex. 700 offences now carry mutilation or death, speaking too loudly near a palace gate, arriving late to state labour, hoarding grain during famine. The law doesn't ask why you broke it, only which part of your body the statute claims. Judges work from manuals, matching crimes to punishments like cooks following recipes. The crowd thickens. You recognise some faces, the woman who sells radishes at the East Market, the boy who delivers water, the old man who used to tell stories before stories became dangerous. None of them look at the platforms. Looking makes you remember, and remembering makes you question, and questions are their own kind of crime. 3 prisoners are dragged forward by guards whose faces show nothing. The first is a scholar. You can tell by his hands, ink-stained fingers that tremble as they're bound. The second is a farmer, back bent from decades in the fields, now bent further by fear. The third is young, maybe 16, with eyes too wide and breath too fast. He's learning what the rest of you already know. Begging doesn't help. Screaming only makes them prolong it. The wooden collar drops over the scholar's neck with a sound like a door closing. 6 feet of timber, heavy as stone, forces his shoulders down and his head forward. His knees buckle, but the collar keeps him upright, a cruel joke the designers must have intended. The farmer receives 1 too. The boy gets bamboo rods instead, each strike counted aloud by a clerk who sounds bored. 20, 30, 40. The numbers mean something in the law books. Out here, they just mean pain measured in increments. You watch because not watching is noticed. Last month, a merchant turned away during an execution, and the magistrate's assistant wrote his name down. The merchant disappeared 3 days later. His shop is empty now, door marked with red paint that warns against trespassing. The paint is still fresh. The executioner emerges from the shade. You know him, old Chen, who used to sell steamed buns near the fountain. His hands shake as he oils the blade, but his face betrays nothing. That's the lesson the Empire teaches best. Anyone can learn to do terrible things if the alternative is joining the condemned. Chen's family eats because his hands stay steady. That's the transaction. That's always the transaction. Behind you, a child asks her mother, "What's happening?" The mother doesn't answer. You understand why. How do you explain that the state requires witnesses, that your presence feeds the machinery, that your silence is the grease that keeps the gears turning? How do you tell a child that watching horror is a civic duty? The drums begin their rhythm, 3 beats that you feel in your chest. The blade rises, catches the first weak light of dawn, and falls. The sound is worse than you remember, wet and final, like butchery, but somehow more deliberate. The scholar's body crumples, but the collar holds him in a kneeling position, a posture of permanent submission. But this is just the morning warm-up. The magistrate's assistant unfurls a scroll and reads an announcement in a voice trained to carry. Tomorrow, there will be another execution, a special one, reserved for traitors against the state. The method will be lingqi, a word that makes even the guards look uncomfortable, death by 1,000 cuts. Reserved for those who question the emperor's wisdom, who hide forbidden books, who speak of virtue when the law demands obedience. The crowd doesn't gasp. Gasping ended months ago, replaced by something quieter and more dangerous: resignation. You've seen lingqi once before, though you tried to forget. The memory stayed anyway, carved into your sleep like characters into stone. You turn to leave, but the soldiers block the exits. Everyone must stay until the magistrate dismisses them. It's policy. Witnesses must witness completely, from the first drum to the final disposal of remains. Leaving early suggests sympathy, and sympathy is a luxury that costs more than you can afford. So you stand, you breathe the copper-scented air, you feel the sun climb higher, and your shadow shrink beneath your feet, as if even your shadow wants to disappear. His name was Wei Zhong, though in 3 months most will have forgotten it. You knew him years ago, before fear became the weather. He taught literature in a small academy near the Western Gate, the kind of teacher who believed words could change minds, that poetry mattered more than politics. When the emperor's decree ordered all non-legalist books burned, Wei Zhong made a choice that everyone else knew better than to make. He refused. Not quietly, publicly. He stood in the magistrate's court and said books were the soul's archive. Said burning them blinded the future. Said the law mistook wisdom for sedition. The magistrate who had once attended Wei's lectures, who had once praised his interpretation of ancient poems, looked at his hands while pronouncing sentence: treason, lingqi. 3 months in a cell to contemplate his errors. You heard about the trial second-hand, through whispers in the market. No one said Wei's name aloud. Names attract attention, but everyone knew. The ink-stained teacher who chose principle over survival. The fool who thought words could stand against swords. Now he kneels in the square, bound to a post, stripped bare from the waist up. His ribs press against skin like bars of an internal cage. They shaved his head, not for hygiene, but to strip dignity, and tattooed his forehead with the character for rebel, black ink that will mark him even in death. His wife came to beg for mercy and was turned away. His students tried to petition, and 5 were arrested. The machinery doesn't just punish the guilty, it punishes proximity. The crowd has swelled to thousands. Some came willingly, drawn by morbid curiosity. Most came because the magistrate's guards knocked on doors this morning and suggested attendance. In the empire's vocabulary, suggestions carry the weight of commands. You spot Wei's eyes, searching the faces. Looking for what? A friendly witness, someone to remember him beyond the caricature the state will create. His gaze passes over you, and you look down. The shame burns hotter than the climbing Sunday. The executioner stands ready, blade gleaming, while a clerk unfurls a scroll listing charges. Each accusation is read slowly, ceremonially, turning bureaucracy into theatre, defying imperial will. Corrupting youth with subversive texts, placing personal conscience above state order. The words sound abstract until you remember they mean pieces of a man's flesh removed systematically. The first cut is shallow, a line across the shoulder designed to awaken every nerve without causing fatal bleeding. Wei Zhong's jaw clenches, but he doesn't scream. Not yet. The second cut follows along the collarbone, then the third across the chest. The method is precise, almost medical, maximum pain, minimum blood loss. The body must remain conscious. That's the entire point. Between cuts, the clerk continues reading. After each charge, the blade visits again. The rhythm is hypnotic and horrible words punctuated by steel, accusations proved through agony. But something shifts. Wei begins speaking. Not begging speaking, reciting poetry from the very texts the empire burned. His voice is thin, cracked, barely audible, but the words carry, "The superior man understands righteousness, the small man understands only profit." The executioner pauses mid-strike, blade hovering. Murmurs ripple through the crowd. Someone recognizes the line, "Confucius, banned philosophy, forbidden truth." The magistrate's face darkens. He barks an order, "Silence him." But silence comes too late. A woman in the crowd whispers the next line, then a man, then another. Within seconds, dozens are murmuring the poem, a collective act of defiance so small and so dangerous that guards scan the crowd frantically, unable to arrest everyone. The executioner works faster now, angry, movements less precise. The blade goes deeper, and blood begins pooling on the platform, dripping between boards to the dirt below. Wei's recitation falters, words dissolving into sounds without meaning. His body sags against the ropes. The crowd's murmur dies like a candle in wind. It takes 2 hours. You count because counting gives your mind something to do besides absorb what your eyes witness. By the end, Wei Zhong is unrecognizable, a testament to what happens when you believe in something more than survival. When the final cut severs the major artery, the relief is almost audible. The clerk rolls up his scroll. The executioner wipes his blade with a rag that was white this morning. Guards toss the remains onto a cart, bound for the mass graves outside the city. No burial rites, no ceremony. Traitors don't deserve rest, and their bodies must be denied the passage that religion promises. Its erasure made complete. The magistrate steps forward, voice carrying across the silent square, "Let this be education." The state's mercy ends where defiance begins. Wei Zhong chose his fate. Choose wisely. Mercy. The word tastes like metal in your mouth. The crowd disperses slowly, reluctantly, as if movement might draw attention. You walk home through streets that suddenly feel narrower, buildings that lean closer, shadows that watch. In your small room, you light no candle. Darkness feels safer. You lie on your mat, and Wei's poetry circles, in your skull like birds that can't find a place to land. You wonder if remembering him makes you guilty of something. You wonder if forgetting him makes you guilty of something worse. Sleep, when it finally arrives, brings no answers, only dreams of blades and voices, and 1,000 cuts that never stop cutting. 200 miles from the execution square, water flows uphill through channels carved in stone. Gardens bloom in winter. The impossible made routine through engineering and will. The emperor sits beneath a pavilion where even shadows seem afraid to fall incorrectly. Qin Shi Huang, first emperor, unifier of fractured kingdoms, builder of walls that stretch beyond sight, believes himself more than human, not metaphorically. He drinks mercury mixed with powdered jade each morning, assured by alchemists that immortality tastes metallic. His hands shake from the poison, but his conviction never wavers. He doesn't witness executions. Numbers arrive instead, delivered on silk scrolls each evening. Deaths tallied by category like harvest reports, treason, theft, disrespect, quota failures. High numbers satisfy him. They mean the system functions. Low numbers satisfy him more. They mean fear works without visible enforcement. Today his chief advisor kneels on marble that cost 3 villages their labor. Li Si, once a student of philosophy, now the empire's sharpest instrument, keeps his eyes lowered in perfect deference. He's the one who proposed burning the books. He's the one who drafted the order that buried 460 scholars alive when they protested that wisdom shouldn't be buried. Unrest spreads in the southern provinces, Majesty. Li Si's voice never trembles. Trembling suggests doubt. The emperor's fingers drum against jade armrests. Increase the punishments. Double the labor quotas. Fear must grow faster than hope. Some advisors suggest measured leniency might. Leniency is rot. The emperor's voice hardens. I didn't forge this land from chaos to watch it crumble because men forgot their place. Fear is the mortar between every brick of this empire. Li Si bows deeper. He knows the script. Argument dies where emperors decree. He's watched advisors vanish for softer suggestions than the one he just swallowed back. Their families wake to soldiers at dawn. Their names get scratched from records. Memory itself becomes a crime. But late at night, alone in quarters, too grand for sleep, Li Si pulls forbidden texts from a hidden compartment. His old teacher's words, copied before the burning. When government becomes oppressive, the people grow cunning. He reads by candlelight that flickers like his certainty, then burns each page. The ash doesn't erase the thought. Meanwhile, in dungeons beneath the palace, a different machinery operates. Boys and men are brought here, sometimes volunteers fleeing starvation, more often conscripts seized from villages. The procedure is called gong xing castration, the removal of manhood. The survivors become eunuchs, trusted to serve because they can't threaten succession with heirs. One such servant, once named Liu, now answers only to what the court calls him, a number, a function, a tool. He remembers his village, the smell of his mother's kitchen, the girl he meant to marry. He remembers the surgeon's blade and the fever that nearly killed him after. He remembers waking hollow, told he should feel grateful for the opportunity. Now he pours wine for ministers who debate virtue while he stands invisible, a ghost in silk robes. He listens to them discuss justice and the greater good. None see the irony. Or maybe they do, and that's the foundation everything rests on. Tonight, he overhears Li Si speaking to a junior official. The emperor wonders why punishments don't deter crime. I told him, men forget pain faster than hunger. We must make the pain unforgettable. The official shifts nervously. How? Expand the 9 familial exterminations. Currently, treason condemns 3 generations. I propose 9. Grandparents, parents, siblings, children, cousins, in-laws. Erase entire bloodlines. Let families police their own. Won't that breed resentment? Resentment we can manage. Rebellion we cannot. Fear must be inherited. The eunuch refills their cups with hands that don't shake, despite nausea churning in his gut. He's heard this conversation in different forms 100 times. The empire doesn't punish crimes. It punishes the possibility of crime, the shadow of dissent, the whisper before the shout. Later, he passes the emperor's chambers and hears laughter. A concubine has pleased his majesty with a song, the same concubine whose brother was executed last month for salt smuggling. She sings beautifully wind through bamboo, water over stones. She sings because refusing would doom her family. The applause that follows is hollow as a drum. Her name is May, and she married a blacksmith who made ploughs that broke earth and fed villages, until he made one dagger without the proper permit, and the earth broke him instead. They came at first light, the way they always do. Soldiers dragged Chen from sleep while May held their daughter, who screamed until her voice shredded. The trial lasted less than an hour. The magistrate read charges from a scroll, barely looking up. Unauthorized weapon production. The penalty was already written. Yao Jian, the waist chop. Death by bisection. The body severed at the torso with a single sword stroke. May didn't understand. One dagger. One tool, made for a customer who needed protection on dangerous roads. How does that merit being cut in half? But understanding isn't required. Only compliance. The execution happens in the market square where Chen once sold his work. The symmetry feels intentional, designed to teach. He kneels on a stone slab, worn smooth by previous use. His arms are bound behind him. His head bowed, the executioner positions himself with professional care. Blade raised a massive sword designed for this singular terrible purpose. Chen looks up, finds May in the crowd. His lips shape words she can't hear but understands. I'm sorry. She doesn't look away. She owes him that much. Their daughter buries her face in May's side, but May's eyes stay fixed. The blade falls. The sound is butcher's work, wet impact, bone cracking, the physics of separation. Chen's upper body topples forward. His lower half remains kneeling in grotesque prayer. Blood spreads across stone in patterns that look almost decorative until you remember what you're seeing. And then horror compounds. Chen's torso twitches. His hands scrabble at ground. His mouth opens, closes, gasping. He's alive. For 30 seconds, maybe a full minute, consciousness clings to half a body. His eyes register confusion, then understanding, then nothing. May's daughter vomits on her shoes. The crowd shifts uncomfortably. Even the executioner looks shaken. This doesn't always happen, but when it does, there's no protocol except waiting. Finally, Chen stills. Guards approach with a cart. They don't let May claim the body. Bisected corpses are deemed spiritually contaminated, unworthy of proper burial. They haul the pieces to a pit outside the city, where dogs and carrion birds finish what the law started. May returns to a house that smells like iron and absence. She washes her daughter's face with water too cold for comfort. Neither speaks. Words feel inadequate to carry what just happened. Within a week, tax collectors arrive. Chen allegedly owed money amounts inflated beyond what he could have earned in 5 years. May has no money. They take possessions instead. Furniture first. Then tools. Then the quilt her grandmother embroidered with silk thread that cost a month's wages. When that's not enough, they take her daughter. For the imperial workshops, the official explains, writing the child's name in a ledger. She'll weave silk. It's honorable work. May knows what honorable means. 14-hour days with fingers bleeding from needle pricks. Supervisors who take liberties in darkness. Girls who disappear, and no one asks why. She begs, offers herself instead. The official laughs actual laughter, as if she's told a joke. You're too old. The girl's fingers are nimble. They drag her daughter away. The child screaming doesn't stop even after they turn the corner and disappear from sight. The sound echoes in the street, in May's chest, in the place where her heart used to be before it turned to stone. She stands in the empty house. Something inside fractures, not dramatically, not with noise, but quietly and completely, like ice cracking under weight too heavy to bear. She's learned the Empire's final lesson. You don't have to commit crimes to be punished. Proximity to crime is crime enough. Love is a liability. Family is a chain that drags you under. That night, she walks to the city's edge, where execution pits fester under starlight. She finds Chen among the refuse. Dogs have scattered him, but she recognizes his hands calloused from forge work, gentle when they touched her face, now stiff and already decomposing. She gathers what she can, wraps the fragments in her last clean cloth, digs a shallow grave in unconsecrated ground beyond the city walls. As she covers him with dirt, she whispers prayers the state forbids. Not Buddhist or Taoist, but older words her grandmother taught her, about spirits who watch over the wronged. She doesn't know if anyone listens. She says them anyway, because silence feels like complicity. Walking back, she passes a temple where incense smoke rises toward a starless sky. A monk stands in the doorway. Their eyes meet, and something passes between them, recognition without words. He steps aside, allowing entry. Inside, the temple holds other women. Widows, mothers, daughters, who've lost someone to the machinery that calls itself justice. They don't speak. Speaking is dangerous. But their presence creates communion, shared acknowledgement that the Empire's justice is a blade that cuts everyone. The monk offers tea. It's bitter, unsweetened, like everything else. May accepts. Does it get easier? She asks. No, he says simply. You just get better at carrying it. May nods. She doesn't cry. Tears are a luxury, and she has none left to spend. Outside, the city continues its routines. Markets open, soldiers patrol, magistrates review cases, sentencing lives with brushstrokes. The Empire rolls forward, vast and indifferent. wheels made of bone turning on axles of suffering. May learns to survive in the spaces between. She takes in sewing, mending clothes for families who pretend not to know her story. She earns just enough to eat. She asks no questions. She attracts no attention. She becomes invisible, which is the only safety remaining. But sometimes, late at night when sleep refuses to come, she thinks about her daughter's hands, small, nimble, bleeding from needles, and wonders if mercy exists anywhere except in the fantasies of the dead. You thought Wei Zhong's death would close the story. Instead, it opened a wound that refuses to heal. 3 months after Ling Qi claimed him, a student named Fang stumbles from prison into daylight that burns his eyes. Not pardoned, just released. The dungeons are overcrowded, and the magistrate's quota is satisfied. Fang is half-starved, covered in lice, and carrying something more dangerous than weapons, purpose forged in darkness. He finds others. Not Wei's remaining students most fled or publicly denounced their teacher to save themselves, but different others. Farmers whose land was seized for the Emperor's Tomb project. Labourers conscripted to build monuments they'll never see finished. Merchants bankrupted by taxes that multiply like weeds. Families shattered by collective punishment, where one person's crime dooms 3 generations. People with nothing left to lose, which makes them the Empire's most unpredictable enemy. They meet in basements that smell like earth and fear. In forests where trees provide cover and distance from informants. Speaking in whispers about the one thing the state can't fully control, memory. They have no weapons, no training, no army, but they have Wei's poetry, memorized, copied onto cloth scraps, in ink made from ash and water. Fang recites the banned verses to small gatherings. The words spread like sickness through the city, carved into tunnel walls by workers, whispered between mothers and daughters, repeated until they become prayer. The superior man understands righteousness, the small man understands only profit. It becomes code, rebellion distilled to syllables that can't be fully erased. The state responds with predictable violence. More arrests, more executions. The machinery accelerates, grinding faster. But something unexpected happens. Every prisoner becomes a story. Every execution creates witnesses who leave changed. The crackdown, meant to suffocate resistance, instead feeds it. Fear still dominates, vast and suffocating, but beneath it something new stirs. Not hope exactly, but refusal. The refusal to forget. Fang's group plans something audacious. The magistrate's archive, the building where every crime, debt, and punishment is recorded on scrolls stacked floor to ceiling, represents the Empire's memory. Burn it, they reason, and you erase the state's ability to punish the past, give people a clean slate. They infiltrate after midnight, slipping past guards bribed with promises they probably can't keep. The archive is vast, each scroll a life reduced to charges and penalties. Fang hesitates with torch in hand. This won't resurrect Wei, won't free May's daughter, won't restore Chen's body, but it might possibly give the next generation a chance to start without inherited guilt. He lights the torch. Paper catches hungrily. Within minutes, flames consume centuries of record-keeping. Smoke billows into the night sky, visible for miles. Alarms sound. Soldiers scramble. Fang and most of his companions escape through tunnels they'd mapped weeks earlier. But not everyone makes it out. 3 are caught, including a woman named Li, who taught children to read before literacy became suspicious. Her punishment, Huo Xing, burning alive, not unusual, but theatrical. The magistrate orders a pyre built in the same square where Wei died, where Chen was bisected, where the Empire stages its lessons in obedience. You're there, again. Because absence marks you as sympathetic, and sympathy costs more than you can afford. Li is tied to a stake. Kindling is heaped around her feet, dry wood that will catch fast and burn hot. She doesn't beg, doesn't recant her crimes or plead for mercy that doesn't exist. As the torch approaches, she begins to sing. A children's song, simple melody about birds and spring and fields untouched by war. Her voice is clear, almost joyful, and for a moment the square falls silent except for that tune. People remember hearing it as children, before fear became the baseline of existence. Then the flames catch. The singing stops. Screaming takes its place raw, primal, the sound of a body fighting annihilation. You want to cover your ears, but your hands won't move. You're frozen, watching a woman become ash while thousands stand witness because standing witness is required. Lee burns for minutes that feel like hours. When it's over, charred bone and the smell of cooked meat remain sweet and sickening, a smell that will haunt your sleep. The magistrate addresses the crowd. This is the fate of traitors. This is the fate of those who destroy imperial property. But something's shifted. The crowd doesn't nod in agreement anymore. Eyes stay fixed on the pyre. Jaws clench, fists tighten at sides. The fear remains vast, suffocating, but beneath it, something else grows. Not courage exactly, more like exhaustion. The exhaustion of being afraid for so long that fear itself becomes unbearable. That night, someone paints a message on the city wall in red ochre. We remember. Soldiers scrub it away by dawn. By noon, it's reappeared in 3 locations. By evening, a dozen more. The Empire can burn books, bury scholars, bisect blacksmiths, immolate teachers. But it can't burn memory from minds that refuse to forget. Fang, hiding in forest outside the city, hears rumors of the graffiti. He smiles for the first time in months. Not victory, not even close. But proof that Wei's death, Chen's death, Li's death weren't meaningless. The Empire wanted them erased. Instead, they've become permanent. He pulls out cloth and makeshift ink, writing Wei's poetry again. Not for himself, he's memorized every line, but for whoever finds this years or centuries from now, when the Empire is dust and the question remains, what did they believe was worth dying for? The answer, fragile and fierce, lives in the space between the cuts, the burns, the silences. It lives in May's prayers over unmarked graves, in the eunuch's secret doubts, in the magistrate's sleepless nights, in your own reluctant, terrified, persistent humanity. It lives because some things refuse to die, no matter how brutally suppressed. The Qin dynasty lasts 15 years. 15 years of legalist perfection, of punishment so refined they became manuals, of an empire held together by invisible chains called fear. And then, almost suddenly, it collapses like a building whose foundation was always rotting. The emperor dies first, poisoned slowly by the mercury he swallowed daily, believing it granted immortality. His tomb, guarded by 7,000 terracotta soldiers, is finished, and the workers who built it are sealed inside alive to protect its secrets. Li Si, architect of so much suffering, is executed by the very laws he crafted. Accused of treason by a political rival, he receives the 5 pains: facial tattooing, nose amputation, foot amputation, castration, and finally the waist chop. The man who perfected the machinery becomes its fuel. His family, per the 9 familial exterminations he expanded, is wiped out: grandparents, children, cousins, erased from record and earth. Rebellions ignite across the land, not organized armies but desperate swarms, farmers with pitchforks, laborers with hammers, scholars with nothing but words and rage that's been building for 15 years. They storm magistrates' compounds, burn tax records, free prisoners from cells that reek of urine and despair. The soldiers, exhausted and underpaid, defect or flee. The empire, so certain of its permanence, crumbles in months. You survive. Somehow, you witness the fall from the same square where you watched executions. But now, instead of blood, there's celebration, chaotic, vengeful, joyous. People dance where they once knelt in terror. Children play where bodies were displayed as warnings. The wooden collars are smashed. The execution platforms torn down, their wood repurposed for cooking fires and small rebellions. May finds her daughter. It takes weeks of searching, following rumors and bribing officials with possessions she doesn't have. She tracks her to a workshop in a southern province. The girl is thin, scarred, silent. She doesn't remember how to smile. But she's alive, and May holds her as if she might dissolve, whispering, "We're safe now. We're safe." The words feel hollow. Safety doesn't erase what was endured. Chen's ghost doesn't return. Wei's poetry doesn't resurrect him. Lee's ashes don't unburn. The punishments may have ended, but their echoes remain in every survivor's bones. Fang emerges from hiding and helps establish a new government, one promising, tentatively and carefully, to govern with Confucian virtue rather than legalist fear. It's imperfect, riddled with corruption and compromise. But it's different. Punishment is still harsh, still public, but not quite as inventive in its cruelty. The law codes are revised. Collective punishment is softened, though not eliminated. Progress measured in slightly fewer screams. You attend a ceremony where the new emperor issues decrees. Henceforth, Lingqi is reserved only for the most extreme cases. The waist chop remains, but requires judicial review. Families of the condemned are no longer automatically exterminated. It's progress, though survivors know that laws can change again when fear returns to power. But scars remain. Walk through any city, and you'll find widows who flinch at the sight of soldiers, children who wet themselves when officials approach, men missing feet, hands, or manhood living testaments to laws no longer enforced but never forgotten. You visit the ruins of the magistrate's compound, now overgrown with weeds that reclaim what humans abandoned. The archive Fang burned is still a blackened shell. Sitting among the ashes, you find a fragment of scroll, half legible. Punishment deters crime, only if the people believe the law is just. When justice becomes synonymous with terror, the state does not rule, it merely occupies. Whose words? Some anonymous clerk with a conscience? You'll never know, but you fold the fragment carefully and carry it home like a fragile treasure. That night, you light a candle and place it in your window. A small ritual, unofficial, that's spreading through the city. One candle for every person lost to the empire's appetite. Your window glows with dozens, so does your neighbours, and theirs, until the entire street flickers, like a constellation made of grief and remembrance. The former eunuch, no longer in service, stands in a temple courtyard. His body is still hollow, but his mind is his own again. He's writing a history, unauthorized and dangerous, documenting the punishments he witnessed, not for glory or revenge, but for record. So that when future dynasties rise, and they will rise, because empires are cyclical, someone might read this and hesitate before repeating the pattern. Will it matter? Another former eunuch asks him. Probably not, he admits, but forgetting guarantees it happens again. May returns to her house, now home to her daughter and 3 other orphans she's taken in. They're learning to weave, not silk for emperors, but cloth for themselves. She teaches them to read using texts Wei once taught, recovered from hiding places across the city. It's technically illegal. It might always be illegal. She does it anyway. One of the children asks, why did they hurt so many people? May pauses, needle suspended. How do you explain systemic cruelty to a child who survived it? Because they believed fear was stronger than anything else, she says finally. They were wrong. Were they? The child asks, too wise for her years. May doesn't answer immediately. The truth is complicated. Fear is strong. It held an empire together for 15 years. It silenced millions. It made executioners of ordinary people and informants of neighbours. Fear works. But it also corrodes. It turns states into prisons and rulers into monsters who die choking on their own medicine. Fear lasts only as long as the blade is sharp, May says quietly. But what we remember that lasts beyond everything. She doesn't know if she believes it, but she says it because the children need to believe something, and memory, however fragile, is better than the alternative. Years pass. Dynasties rise and fall, each promising reform, each eventually resembling what came before. The punishments evolve. Ling Qi persists into the 20th century before foreign pressure finally ends it. The waste chop fades. Public executions become private, then humane, though definitions remain slippery. But the impulse never quite dies. The belief that cruelty can enforce order, that fear can substitute for justice, that some people's suffering is acceptable for stability, that impulse lives on, waiting. You, reading about this centuries later, might think, how barbaric, how primitive, we would never. But look closer. Look at systems that trade human dignity for efficiency. Laws that punish poverty as if it were crime. Spectacles designed to make suffering entertaining. Collective punishments disguised as policy. The silence of crowds who know something's wrong but say nothing because speaking costs too much. The Qin dynasty is gone. Its instruments of cruelty are museum pieces behind glass. But the machinery, the willingness to inflict pain for order, to sacrifice individuals for the collective, to look away when looking, would demand action. That machinery is always being rebuilt, always humming quietly, waiting for someone to flip the switch. Ancient China's punishments went too far, but the distance between too far and acceptable is smaller than comfort allows. So the question isn't just, how did they let this happen? It's, what am I letting happen now? And that question, uncomfortable and urgent, is the truest legacy of those blood-soaked squares, those unmarked graves, those voices that sang even as flames rose. The candles still flicker in windows, the stories still whisper through generations, and somewhere, carved into stone, where authorities haven't found it yet, 3 words remain: we remember. May that be enough.